Just think of that Futurama episode with William Shatner singing to that, like space blob thing that is really into Star Trek. You know what I'm talking
Oh
about?
yeah,
It's like, how did he find a way to do the real Slim Shady? He's like, he found a way.
he found a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the way the
Did a
way whoever the
spoken
voice
word.
actor says it, he found a way. I always think of that. I'm like, surely it couldn't get worse. No, they found a
They
way.
found a way. Yes. Hey everyone, my name is Marcus,
And I'm Tom.
and this is the VF and Comics and Graphics podcast. I almost forgot the name of the
Yes.
podcast we were
I think you were
doing.
focused on whether or not we hit the beat on our names, and you're
I
like, "Oh, did we do
know.
it?"
You're this
Mindfulness.
right. So this week we just have a little bit of catching up on some different kinds of news, some interesting things that I saw. I have a pitch for Tom for a new segment for the show. And then Tom and I, for our main conversation, are going to talk a little bit about series fatigue. I know there's a lot of superhero fatigue when it comes to the movies right now, and there's even comic book event fatigue. But I want to go even further into something where there's just too much of like a series. It doesn't even have to be a crossover for you to get fatigued about. But I will start off with something a little bit happy. So, Tom, last week I talked about I started reading finally a webtoon by DC Comics called Wayne Family Adventures.
Oh yeah, I remember you
And
mentioning that. Yeah.
I was I was glowing about it. I was so excited, and it's a chill slice of life for the Batman family, which has like 30 people. It's but it's so great that it's given everyone their little moment in the sun. And of course, the week I finally decide to start reading it, DC has announced that they are going to start releasing 3 more webtoon series. And they're based on characters that I'm a little bit surprised because these characters are not like their A-list characters. This isn't a Superman webtoon, a Flash, or a Wonder Woman.
Who's this? Sorry.
There are 3 different ones. One is about the character Vixen. Vixen, I'm most familiar with from Justice League Unlimited, the cartoon, but even more so from her appearances in the CW DC universe. Another one is about Red Hood and
Okay.
the Outlaws, which people know a little bit more about the Red Hood.
Yeah.
But he has a team that includes Artemis of Banamigdal and Bizarro. Yes, that
Okay.
Bizarro, the
Okay.
Superman villain. And they have a team called the Outlaws. And then the last one is about Zatanna, who is a powerful magician in the DC universe. And it's called Zatanna and the Ripper. Really cool characters to pick up. To explain to you what's going to happen in Vixen, it's called Vixen NYC. It's about Vixen in her first year of college and living in New York. Now, Vixen has a special medallion amulet that kind of gives her the abilities of animals,
Okay.
any animal that she chooses. And this this series on Webtoons looks like it's going to cover like her early time in New York. It says she is hit with an energy that gives her the power of the animal kingdom. That's exciting, but then it's dot 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 of New York. And I thought about all the animals in New York, like pigeons
And
and
rats.
rats.
Yeah, that was, like, what I thought of too of, like, "Oh, is it bound?" Like, she has to see the animal because in New York, that ain't great, like, her
Yeah.
options are really limited.
So they could be playing this for laugh. It could be just really interesting to see what kinds of abilities she pops out. And then it might surprise us with some of the animals they use too. But it's also about a young woman learning how to be an adult. So I think it's going to cover a little bit of that and use its setting to its advantage. I also thought of the cockamouse from
Yes, the Cockamouth How
How I
I Met Your
Met
Mother. Yes.
It's a cockroach and a mouse. They had a
It
baby.
yes. It's
It's
interesting that it's
pregnant.
Manhattan because usually, like, I'm used to DC stories taking place in fictional cities,
Mhm.
and so, it's interesting. I wonder, like, how New York it feels, like, reading it, like
Well, and they recently moved. There's a Batman series about he's the Batman he's the next Batman, I guess. And it's Luke Fox, one of Lucius Fox's sons,
oh,
and
awesome.
he has moved to New York to be the Batman of New York
Oh, okay. Alright.
recently. Yeah, really interesting because usually Marvel is who you think of when you think of
Yeah,
Batman.
of, like, actual cities because I was thinking, like, with, like and I think, like, they said, like, Metropolis is in the Northeast, but it's not New York, it's, like, near Delaware, right? Or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, it's
And
up there.
then where's Gotham City? Is it or is it around where Chicago would be? Like, because I mean, I guess that because that's where Nolan filmed it, and so when I think of it now, I think of Chicago, but
I always feel like it gets moved around a lot. Famously, those two cities are across the bay from each other in Batman v Superman, and one
oh,
of the
that's
dumbest
right. You're
decisions of the
absolutely right.
universe.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man, forgot about that. Yeah.
Because that was a decision that got made. Um, I couldn't tell you for sure. I know that Gotham itself is based on a neighborhood, originally based on a neighborhood in New York City. So it's kind of meant to as like to stand in as that neighborhood at night.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes
So I think
sense
I
for
think it's
sure.
around. Believe it's East Coast as well.
But anyway, that's really cool, and it does like you said that these comics are real slice of life. Like they're supposed to feel like everyday life, not necessarily like the kind of craziness that like the issue brings, right?
Yeah,
And
like
so, like, doing that, I think, really lends to that.
even in the Wayne family adventures, ever so often you get a bit of a peek of like one of their adventures where they're stopping a villain, but it's focused on the character interactions more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so the next one, I don't know how they're going to do this exactly. It would be a very interesting slice of life, and I'm wondering if they're going to use the same Red Hood Jason Todd for this series, Red Hood Outlaws, as they're using for Wayne Family Adventures, or if they're just not worried about continuity. And it's fine if they're not worried about continuity between their webtoons. I don't care. So the synopsis says the Outlaws are trying to go legit and fell spectacularly. The Justice League has issued a challenge to Red Hood, Artemis of Bonamigdal, and Bizarro, who have to try and replace their goody two shoe counterparts as the heroes the world neither deserves nor needs. And so I feel like it's going to be. I feel like this book might end up being more slapstick
That's fun.
about like some anti-heroes who or I guess the tone I'm hearing if you've watched any of the Harley Quinn show on HBO Max, it's very much making it makes fun of like some of the goody two shoe stuff and has fun with the source material. It's not overly self-serious. So I get that vibe out of this one from the description. Maybe it
Yeah.
won't be as vulgar as Harley Quinn on
One
HBO Max because
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes, it
I like
is.
this art from the
I can't
Vixen.
wait to read these. Like I'm down. And the last one is about Zatanna and the Ripper. And I immediately was just like Jack the Ripper? Why are they what does Zatanna have to do with Jack the Ripper? Surely that's not it. I read the synopsis and it actually is
Jack
about
the Ripper?
Zatanna having to figure out investigate Jack the Ripper
Awesome.
in the 1800s. So she's gone back in time, and I'm hoping that they use the series, even though I'm sure it might also be lighter, to explore some of the magical side of the DC universe, especially the dark magic, because it does say that it's going to have Constantine show up. I always love it when one of the DC books explore the magic world because I feel like they don't get touched enough. I know in recent years we had a Justice League Dark that Wonder Woman led a team of magic-based characters, and also Man-Bat was on the team, which is
Oh,
really weird.
cool. Wow.
Yeah, it was real. It was so good, and the villain was just so much better than any other villain out there, and so I'm sure this won't be as dark, but I'm excited to see what they do with DC's magical side of the universe. Because even though it's 1800s, there are some characters like Etrigan the Demon who only speaks in rhyme. It's just he's a demonic knight, but he
Yes.
has existed throughout time. Maybe they'll show up in some other characters like that, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so, yeah, so those are the three Webtoon series that are coming out. If you don't know what Webtoons is, you can Google search Webtoons, or you can download the app on your phone. And basically, it is these amazing free series that you can read on any device. So
Just
definitely
through
go
the
check that
DC
out.
just through the DC app?
No, not the DC app. It's a Webtoon is app
Oh, it's
because they,
its own thing.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
DC just recently hopped on to Webtoons. This has been going on a while. There are tons of creators for these Webtoons.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um, and DC is just also publishing on that site.
Nice, okay, that's awesome.
You know, and as nice as that is, I do want to talk about something that's not super nice, and that is I put the title DC and the WB dumpster fire because this week has kind of been shit for DC. First off, Bleeding Cool reported, but a bunch of sources reported that basically the HBO Max chief, the chief revenue officer, the chief technology officer, the chief financial officer, the executive VP, the chief human resources office, and the exec VP of communications and Warner Media's general counsel are going to exit Warner Brothers once Discovery and Warner Brothers
Oh,
end up
merge.
merging.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah, I forgot they were merging.
which like that's a
That's a shakeup right
n-
there. Damn.
that's a shakeup. And even more recently, I didn't realize this, but the chair and CEO of Warner Brothers and the CEO of Warner Media has also recently exited the company.
Why? Why?
I, it doesn't say. And what the chair and CEO of Warner Brothers apparently was a supporter of like the DC Comics, aspect of things. So this is concerning not just uh, this is a dumpster fire, not just because of the shows and the movies, because that's been its own dumpster fire now for over a decade,
Yeah.
but how this will affect things moving forward for any of the shows and movies, because some of them have found some success. The most recent, the Suicide Squad movie, found a lot of success.
Peacemaker,
Had a
Peacemaker,
had a
and Doom
spin-off show with
Patrol.
Peacemaker.
Doom
Doom
Patrol is really
Patrol,
great. Yep.
Titans, no matter how you feel about it, is about to go into its fourth season.
Okay.
Harley Quinn's in multiple seasons. But I'm also worried as a comic reader, there is a chance that, we'll have the number of series that DC is publishing being limited, which might not necessarily be a bad thing, but it also means that there might be less risk taking with certain characters. So we're going to run into a problem that we're going to talk about a little bit later, and that not risk taking means that we're still going to have like 20 different Batman series. And there's
Ugh.
so much more out there. So that is one thing that's getting talked about. But the other shakeup is an element of the dumpster fire, whereas that's the main dumpster. Over to the side is a trash can on fire, and its name is Ezra Miller getting arrested in Hawaii. um,
Oh.
because apparently, it's been reported that this led to a meeting between Warner Brothers executives about the future of Ezra Miller in Warner Brothers properties, which isn't just as the Flash, which I like him as Barry Allen.
You
He's
do?
fine. Yeah. And I'm excited for the Flash movie that he's starring in coming out. But remember, he's also playing a character in Fantastic Beasts series. But I don't really like those movies that much. So it's interesting that like someone who's starring in two of their major tentpole series
Yeah.
is may be out, and that's concerning. And to me, it's really concerning for the DC universe because Peacemaker had a cameo of some of the Justice League members, including Ezra Miller's Flash.
How long are they contracted in to be the Flash?
I don't know for sure. I'm sure for, like a certain number of movies. It looks like they might end up buying him out. The concern for me in the DC universe is that Miller's Flash is one of the few consistent pieces of that universe. Like he multiple Justice League members are no longer going to be in the movies going forward. I think Ben Affleck's going to have a brief role in the Flash movie, but there's just they're dropping their major players like their major actors are dropping like flies. And to me, between the Warner Brothers Discovery shakeup and this, I can see Discovery coming in and just cleaning the slate and just being
Is Discovery the
like,
bigger company?
one sentence again on Bleeding Cool. I hear that Discovery is making their way through the entire organization, department by department, and assessing salaries to see where they can make some trims. So it seems like, yeah, Discovery is getting to make some of those decisions. Again, they've lost many of their top executives. They may lose some more. Their Discovery by AT&T is looking like it's coming in and it's going to be cutting off what it feels are useless appendages.
Wow, that's crazy to think about. I wouldn't guess. It's funny, like I guess through AT&T, Discovery's bigger because I just wouldn't. I consume
No.
so much more from Warner Brothers and DC than I do Discovery. You know.
Absolutely. We were talking about before we started recording about some game, like we both got PlayStation 5s recently and we're talking about exclusives, and we kind of came up, I talked about Bethesda and I was disappointed I won't be able to play Starfield right away because I won't have an Xbox when it comes out. And it seems like we're just in the age of buying up expensive properties. I feel like every day I turn on the news and one major company has bought another major company. And it's
Yeah.
happening a lot, like just snagging IPs left and right. So we'll see what that all comes down to. Right now, I'm going to keep reading my DC series that I love, especially One Star Squadron, the weirdest book I've read in a while.
Do you feel like what would be your guesses as to what they'd cut down on?
I don't know Warner Brothers structure enough to know for sure.
Yeah.
I do feel like in terms of money and time, it depends on if Discovery executives come in with a long-term plan or short-term make money plan. Because if I was planning long-term when I came in, I wouldn't cut off the DC IP farm, but I would restructure the hell out of it because what they're doing isn't working. And I say that as that some of it works and some of it definitely doesn't. And it's been random, which is a witch. It's like we have a good movie and then a not great movie, a movie that makes a lot, and the movie that doesn't make a lot. It's been
Yeah.
so up and down, and it's clear that just not someone there ensuring that's able, maybe even able to ensure the consistent quality. And even when it comes to directors, Patty Jenkins, great director, loved the first Wonder Woman movie. And I don't really understand what happened with the second one, but I feel like it really pooped the bed.
Man, yeah.
And I couldn't sit down to watch it again.
And that
And
was like that was the reaction all over Twitter. Like it trended, I
yep.
remember.
Oh yeah.
I remember like if I remember right, like Brian Altano, I think even Greg Miller.
Hmm.
And he's a massive DC fan.
Yep.
But he was, if I remember right, I think like I don't know. I don't think Greg Miller is like the harshest critic, you know. But if
Yeah.
I remember, I think Brian Altano being like, "Man, this is not working," you know.
Yeah.
That
And
one like stands out in
I
my memory.
I can see all the ideas that they were trying to do, but when it got put together, it just didn't work. I felt like some pieces got cut up. And then one of the major characters they really built up and were working on was Kristen Wiig's character, who ends up being the villain, the cheetah. That's not a spoiler. in my opinion.
Yeah, no, no, no.
But by the time she shows up in full cheetah, it's a very CG, blurry kind of like you never get a feel for her as that character, and the ending is so ambiguous. I know DC movies have said they're not worried about continuity between their movies all of a sudden, but Wonder Woman was definitely a part of the continuity that they did have, to the point that the first Wonder Woman movie is a book ended by Bruce Wayne sending her a letter and a picture, and the Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, yeah.
So when the second one has like this major worldwide magical event, I was like, oh, what?
Yeah.
And that really wasn't the major issue in all of it. I did think they wasted the hell out of the cheetah and Kristen Wiig. It's a lie. That'd be a whole other thing to break down.
It's true. It's
But that,
like what Spider-Man 3 did with
yep,
Venom.
yep.
Just
It
just shoving 3 or 4 big villains into
mhm.
one story, and you're like, you could have done something really cool.
And then and then back to my original point of just it's completely random hit and miss which ends up being good, which
Yeah.
films and shows and all that end up being, and not just good critically but also financially successful.
It was clutch for them to get onto HBO Max and
Hmm.
out of their own subservice.
Yeah, and in HBO Max there are going to be some movies, it looks like the Batgirl film is going straight to HBO Max.
Oh, like along with a theater release?
I think just on HBO Max. I'm not
Oh,
100%.
okay. Okay.
So they're definitely utilizing that. But it's just Warner Brothers has just has had such shakeups the last few years that I don't know. I want them to stop throwing crap at the wall and just assess and make something good.
Yeah.
And and a shakeup's the only thing I think could do that at this point.
So it could be good.
I hope so. I mean, like, and if not, I'll just have nothing's changing, so I
Well,
don't
so,
have
yeah,
anything to
well, at
worry
least
about.
something's gonna change, right? Because new
Yeah,
management, you know.
yeah. I want to say it couldn't get worse, but where's some wood I can knock on?
Just think of that Futurama episode with William Shatner singing to that, like space blob thing that is really into Star Trek. You know what I'm talking
Oh
about?
yeah,
It's like, how did he find a way to do the real Slim Shady? He's like, he found a way.
he found a way.
Yeah. The
Yes.
way
Did a
whoever the
spoken
voice
word.
actor says it, he found a way. I always think of that. I'm like, surely it couldn't get worse. No, they found a
They
way.
found a way. Yes. That is such a fandom episode. Like,
Yeah,
for
I
a
know
Star
it's
Trek fandom,
reaching it into like
yeah,
niche territory, but that
yeah.
that voice sticks out to me so much. I always hear it whenever someone says a statement like that. I'm like, there's no way
Oh,
that that can happen.
and tangent from that episode. This is unrelated to anything we're talking about besides that episode, but when I was a kid, I didn't understand why when Scotty stopped touring with them, they got this guy named Welshie, but I get it now.
Well, she.
I didn't get that, like, it's like Scotty and Welshie, like that makes sense. I was like, Welshie's a weird name. Oh, I get it
Yes,
now. And then when he
yes.
talks and everything, it's just
Oh
like,
yeah,
okay, all right, I'm following you now. Anyways,
super good.
back back on track a little bit. Um, so before we move on, and this was announced like a couple months ago, but I just forgot it was coming out because, like most people, sometimes you just forget something is coming out, especially when there's so many comics out there and you're
It's a
trying to collect
lot
comics.
now. Yeah.
Back in, I believe, 2011, there was a miniseries called Flashpoint. And just to kind of recap what Flashpoint was it was an event that was only a handful of issues, and in it you eventually find out, like, Barry Allen, the Flash, wakes up in a world where he doesn't have powers and everything's very different. There's like basically a World War III happening in Europe too. And it turns out that Barry Allen had gone back in time to save his mother. And when he did, he altered the timeline. So it wasn't an alternate universe, it was the main prime world completely altered to the point that many characters were completely different. Cyborg was now head of a like it was basically the head superhero. Superman was nowhere to be found. He didn't exist. Wonder Woman and the Amazons were at the war was between the Amazons and Aquaman and the Atlanteans.
Wow.
It was a very, I thought, good way to reboot your universe with a good story that anyone could understand. If you just read the Flashpoint series to understand what happened, you'd be fine. But in it, they introduced the character of Thomas Wayne. And when I say introduce, I don't mean the first time Thomas Wayne's ever been in a comic. Um, but Barry goes to find Batman because he's like, if anybody can help me fix this, it's Bruce. And he doesn't find Bruce. He finds Thomas. And Thomas Wayne is now Batman. Because
Whoa.
in the alley that night, Martha and Bruce were shot.
Oh, man.
And that's what you're told. Now, my favorite thing about this, and I didn't get all of them, but there were lots of 3-issue miniseries that focused on a character or group of characters that lived in that world. And one was about Frankenstein, and another was about Deathstroke, who's kind of like being a pirate. And it just they had all these great, and they were just all like 3-issue limited series, and it was basically just complete retoolings of characters and powers and abilities. Really clever little ways to expand this small mini series. And one of them was called Batman Knight of Vengeance. And Batman Knight of Vengeance 3 issues have just been recollected in a single collection. So it's just 3 issues, so it's not like full graphic novel length. And it tells the story basically of who Thomas Wayne is as Batman, and he is nothing like Bruce. For all the criticisms towards Bruce being very damaged Batman, Thomas is more so.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
Yes.
the trauma.
He
I feel like because he's suffering the trauma as an adult,
Mhm.
like that grief already. Because by the time Bruce is an adult, it can be a little numb to it. You just don't know how to process it the same way as a child. I don't think.
No, and it shows in that like he's definitely more violent. He has been
Yeah.
known to kill, and Thomas Wayne is no longer a doctor here. In order to upkeep his Batman lifestyle while being able to do what he wants at night, he actually owns and runs Wayne casinos. So Gotham is more bleak
Oh, damn.
than normal. And
That's such an interesting twist because you're right of like into the child psychology of like what that event does to Bruce Wayne, but how differently an adult would process it. And like being more rage filled seems like such a you could totally get there.
and and they get there easily. And again, it's only 3 issues and it's incredible. And there's a twist that I didn't see coming because sometimes when I'm reading a book, I'm not trying to anticipate what's coming, so I don't see twists that might be obvious. But there's a twist that comes later in the 3 issues that I found to be just so interesting. I couldn't help myself
Yeah.
to love it. And my favorite thing about all these different series too is at the end of the day, in the long-term publishing, this was Barry was going to fix this, blah blah blah, and change things back to normal, which he doesn't exactly change them back to normal, and that's really interesting too. So because of that, there are stakes. There are characters that maybe don't die but have something happen to them that just punch you in the gut. For instance, I said there was no Superman. And if you're thinking like, how would Barry going back in time change whether or not there's a Superman? Kal-El exists. There's not a Superman.
He just never becomes Superman.
Not It's not quite that
Or just never
simple.
comes
And
to Earth or
it, what happens is sad, I'll say that.
oh damn. Okay.
What happens is sad because I mean Barry goes to look for the entire Justice League and He just doesn't find them in the same capacity.
Wow.
Some of the characters never got their powers and are dead.
Damn. And this just came out. You can pick this up at your
So
local
yeah,
shop
so
now.
they've re-released, yeah, the collected of the 3 issues, Batman Knight of Vengeance. And the reason they're doing that is there's a new series coming out called Flashpoint, World of Flashpoint, I believe. And it's going to focus on Thomas Wayne.
Okay.
And it says in the synopsis that he is trying to figure out why so Thomas is aware that Barry changed the timeline back, so he knew he wasn't going to exist anymore.
Yeah.
So when he comes to, he's trying to solve the mystery of why does he exist? Why does his world exist? Because it shouldn't.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's a cool series coming up. So that's why they reprinted that, because
To give
Thomas
you,
Wayne is
yes, you can read the back on it.
yeah, you kind
Yeah.
of like see where he's coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
awesome. Really cool.
really, really excited for that. I picked it up. I've already reread through it. It's so good. I might bring it over later.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And I want
It
to
makes
bring
me
it
like,
over.
and Telltale played
Oh,
around with Thomas Wayne too, remember?
yes, yes. And oh, man, the Telltale games,
So
so
good.
good.
That was a good
So
story.
but one other thing I want to bring over for you later, Tom, was one I want to see you and give you a hug and hold you too long till it gets weird.
Till the night closes
Is
in.
until the night closes in. Originally, we were going to talk about something different today. We were going to talk about you and Megan and your opinions on ongoing series and kind of y'all's aversion to it somewhat. But Megan's not here, and I really want to get both of your opinions on that. So I picked up a book a couple days ago, Batman White Knight. And after reading it, it gave me an idea.
Hmm.
In that, one thing I can't do as a reader or reviewer is when I read any DC Marvel book, I have a lot more background knowledge on those characters, where they came from, what that might be alluding to. I might not even realize it's trying to allude to something because it's so ingrained in me to know these characters' histories. So, what I want to do is I want to find some superhero books. Think very much like The Long Halloween
Oh yeah, I love the
or
Long Halloween.
Batman Year One. And unfortunately, I can only think of Batman right now. But a book about mainstream superheroes that anyone can pick up and it's still good. I read Batman White Knight. It exists in its own continuity. It is its own thing.
Yeah,
And I loved it. And I thought it was so good.
I loved
And I
Maximum
started,
Carnage as a kid, as a
oh,
teenager.
yes.
That was like one of my
And
favorite stories.
so basically, I want to know if you guys were to read something like that, am I just so ingrained with these character histories that I'm able to put things together so it's not confusing, or is this book legitimately great standing on its own? And
Oh, that is interesting. That's a good question. Like, would we get the same reading it? Like,
yes,
would I have the same reaction? Yeah.
would you have the same reaction, or just like even be able to
Appreciate
understand and
it.
enjoy and
Yeah.
appreciate it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna find some books like that for you guys, and I'm not gonna overburden you with
No,
too
I mean, they're
many.
quick reads. Like, I remember, The
Yeah,
Long Halloween's a very fast read. I remember reading
yeah,
that so fast.
and I'm definitely gonna try to find just like standalone. And sometimes it might be a graphic novel, sometimes it might be a single issue. I want to be able to recommend to people who see Batman issue 1195, and that's intimidating for hopping in. Tom, you got very lucky whenever you started Star Wars years ago and you hopped in at Marvel's new series
Yeah, they
right at their number
rebooted.
ones.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you were to go to the comic shop now and you saw issue 43, you might have a different opinion on starting that all of a
For sure. I
sudden.
mean, like, I had to catch up on some of the stuff they'd done. Remember they, like, dropped a planet on Chewbacca and stuff like that? Like, I had,
Uh, That's
like,
incredible, by the way.
and that's just in the comic series, because I had read most of the Legends books,
Hmm.
So, like, I was aware of a lot of the Bat canon on that. And that's, I think, where I can kind of approach where you're coming from with, like, when you read Batman. But I don't know if this happens to you sometimes with Batman, and that sometimes, like, knowing the stuff from the Legends books, I get a little disappointed in where they've changed it now, you know? And that may not have happened as much with Batman because they haven't really moved that out of canon, but
Well, it's one of those interesting things where that happens because especially superheroes that have been around for, 70, 80 years at this point, at a certain point they have to ignore stories that came before. They just have to. I've had books where they've taken ideas and I feel like they've done something bad with them, but then they've also taken ideas and done something really good with them. Grant Morrison was one of my favorite Batman writers that did that. He took this old Silver Age concept of the Batman of many nations that was real corny and hokey, and he turned it into an actual modern day team with his Batman Inc. Storylines and stuff,
yeah.
and it was so good, and it was such a great callback to that. Um, but then like there's been plenty. I'm sure there's plenty of times with superheroes where they make those callbacks or they erase something and do something new that it's like,
Yeah, you're just, like, nostalgic
ooh.
for it, or it's, like, something you really
Yeah,
enjoyed,
absolutely.
With Star Wars, I just feel and there's still time for them to come in, but just some characters were they're just gone now, Dash Rendar, you
Shadows of the
know
Empire never happened.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I feel like they can bring that in. They gotta Shadows is easy to, like,
No, we
shadows
need
happen.
Boba Fett season 2 instead.
Hell no. We should have gotten now like a nice high budget adaptation of Shadows of the Empire would have been great.
Yeah,
That would have been. I mean,
and we
harder
could
to
still
do
get that.
because the trilogy characters are all up in it, but
I'm all for on this group that wants Sebastian Stan to be Luke Skywalker moving forward. I don't know if you've
oh,
seen it. I don't know if you've seen the fan pics that people have done.
looks like him. That's pretty hilarious.
That could work. That could work. Man, we've already spent so much time talking on other things, and by I think I've been talking the
It's
most.
okay.
But I want to go ahead for time wise and move to the main conversation, and we were kind of getting into it there for a second with my idea for the new segment, and that was talking about series fatigue. I wrote here the best thing about mini comics, particularly DC and Marvel, is that to me also one of the worst things, and it's that they can go on forever. So their universes are always growing and changing for many years. So I could read about Batman 15 years ago and still get new Batman stories today. And so this gives way to like some amazing storytelling and exploration, but it also leads to fatigue. And I've experienced that recently, and I know you've experienced it before too. But I get fatigued because recently I dropped all my X-Men series. Not because it's bad, they're very good. But I'm reading so much in X-Men, and as a kind of a completionist reader, I want to read all of the things that are coming out in relation to those characters. And it's just become too much, and I'm starting to pass over certain issues or put it away. And I'm just not really enjoying it because it just seems like a workload because it's so much. I know sales direct decisions. It's why we have, 20 Spider-Man or 20 Batman series. I just have gotten really tired of these series where they all have to connect, even if it's not every issue, but it's like, 10, 12 different series all connected to each other. There's been books in the past I struggled with on that, where sometimes that shared universe leads to you having to read so many issues. And at first you're like, oh, this is great. I'm getting to live in that world. But eventually you just get tired of it. And so that's kind of something that's been happening to me with X-Men lately.
Yeah, with Star Wars, mainly with Star Wars with me, it was it's like there were so many to keep up with that it was becoming monetarily kind of crazy,
Hmm.
because at the time, they launched like there was the main series, and then Kanan was a short one, like 5 or 6 issues. Afra had her own series, Darth Vader had his own series. There was Star Wars Adventures just launching at the time. C3PO, like there was a droid series
Mhm.
if I remember right. Obi-Wan had a series. And I was picking all these up because I just been like, oh, just put anything Star Wars in my box. And with some of them, it's like it's not that I was tired of reading them. It's just like at that point, and I don't know if this is like a comic sim, but it's just like I just want the trade paperback so I can collect them all in one go and budget that, that way, because it's just easier for me to like, oh, I want this Darth Vader arc, like Vader down, all in one collected thing. That's and for me, like organization wise, like that's that storyline. Great, I have that because I have all those issues in long boxes, and it would take me forever to be like, "Oh, these are the stories for Vader Down," and stuff like that. Like, so I think your uncle collects them like that now, right?
Yeah, so Jeff, huge, especially DC nerd, and he got to a point where he traded in a whole
That's
bunch of
crazy to
his
me because I mean,
issues
like, that's
in
crazy.
exchange for just the graphic, the collections and the graphic novel collections
But he was wanting to
of
like
a bunch of these
downsize
characters.
the actual like size of it,
Yeah.
right? Because I think he was like, because he has that room.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes. Oh yeah, he's got his own room just for that stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember. So I
And
think he
one
was
day it'll
like,
be mine.
yes, man, yes.
And I get you there on just wanting to collect like the collections of the stories that you want to read. And it's this weird thing with comics where so many of them come out in issues first. And if they're not selling as issues, you're never going to see the trade collection unless it's just a super popular character. And that was kind of another reason, as I was like, man, these X-Men books I think are doing really well. I believe I'll be able to pick these up and trade later, and they'll see that that's selling. So maybe that will still be helpful. But monetarily, it's like I can now also keep track. And if I end up reading that they're not doing well and I'm not liking the storylines, I can be like, cool, I'm just not going to get that now.
Yeah.
Whereas with the issues, that's not always possible depending on the size of a print run. And
It's crazy that those,
sometimes,
like, stories can just disappear in time, and then later on, if you hop back in or if you're picking it up, you're just unable to get that chunk of the story.
and that's where digital comics apps have really helped out. Like I've been able to read a lot of old DC issues with the DC app. And that's something I wouldn't be able to do if I was trying to pick up physical issues because so much hasn't been reprinted for, graphic collections. And again, sometimes characters like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, they'll get the proper treatment of these big collections. But I mean, some of the weirder characters don't. I'm having to go hand find single issues that have Frankenstein in them right now. I'm a big fan of DC's Frankenstein character.
It's funny that it's a DC character, just Frankenstein.
The books are so good.
No,
Frankenstein
I
Pictures
don't
Team is
doubt it. It's
so
just
good.
like, that's hilarious.
Um, so it just seems like monetarily there's like some fatigue there, but I've also been facing something of just like there's so many good things I'm trying to read, and I'm just not giving the X-Men the time, and I'm just tired of how much there is.
There's so
I'd
much
rather come back and grab it
everything.
later.
You have to pick and
Yes.
choose now. Like, half the time, it's like, these comic series sound great, but between other hobbies and life responsibilities, it's so hard to there's no way to do it all, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-mm.
to catch up on everything in every category.
What's nice with comics, it's like I enjoy reading these. It is my favorite way to consume stories,
Mhm.
hobby. And so I'm able to give it the time that, I'm not giving TV or other things.
Yeah.
So so I just wanted to let, you see if we could talk a little bit about some of that fatigue and remind people that if you're decided to like drop a series or there's something you're just not enjoying anymore, or if you're just kind of tired because you've got too much going on, it's okay to drop something,
Especially
and
if you're not enjoying it.
you may return to it later,
Yeah.
you may not, but there's so much out there, you're never going to consume everything. I really do hope that I return to these X-Men trades later on and catch up on some of the events of the series, but I just kind of need a break right now. Like I spent a good what, maybe year off of DC actually, after their death metal event. And I've only recently hopped on, and I've been kind of picky choosy about what I get. But now I'm just kind of really swing. The only DC stuff I think I picked up last year was from their Black Label, which was a lot of standalone, like non-continuity based stories, or they were books that were had nothing to do with their DC properties. They were just published under that label, like the Nice House on the Lake,
Hmm.
which has nothing to do with the DC universe. It's just its own series.
That's really cool. I love stories
Oh,
like
that book's
that.
so good. I'm going to be collecting hardback editions of Nice House on the Lake
Yeah,
at a later
nice.
date. It is so good. But yeah, so I think that's going to be it for us this week. Don't forget to join our book club. You don't have to do anything special. You can get the book from the library, but every month we're reading a new graphic novel and we're going to talk about it. And if you go to our social media and join the graphic novel book club, we can use your input to help inform our discussions because you may catch stuff that we don't. And if you catch stuff that we do, I can use you in an argument against someone who didn't catch it. And that
Yes.
would be great.
And March's episode's already up, and you
Yeah,
can still
March's
read the
episode's
book.
up if
It's
you
embroideries, so
embroideries by Marjane Satrapi.
yeah,
And this month we are reading
Jimmy
Jimmy Corrigan. I
Corrigan.
almost said Jim Corrigan. And
Yes, Jimmy
I was like, no,
Corrigan.
Jim Corrigan is a different character. Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest
Kid.
boy on earth, smartest, I always say boy, the smartest kid on earth. And it's by Chris Ware. And it looks to be a very different book from Embroideries. If you want to read that, come check it out. And thanks for listening to us and checking us out this week. We will see you guys all next week.
Bye.